Good morning, everyone. We're going to start our webinar now. So our webinar for today is building a Gen Y friendly recruitment process. So over the next hour, we'll be going over the objectives of this presentation, introducing both who we are, that's Minefield Group, as well as our presenters, looking at the Gen Y recruitment problem, and then how you can then improve your recruitment process to better track and interview Gen Y candidates. We'll then have a QA and a discussion with Gen Yers, and then give you some things to do both today and tomorrow to further improve your process. So out of this presentation, we hope that you'll gain the following objectives. Both gaining a high-level overview about Gen Y and who they are, and see the differences between Gen X and Gen Y. We'll give you a framework to help evaluate your recruitment strategies and identify areas for improvement, and then give you a list of to-dos so that you can take what you learn here and actually put it right into place in your organization. So a bit about Minefield Group. Minefield Group is a recruitment process outsourcing organization. What that means is we become your branded recruitment department, helping you find the candidates that you can't easily find. We work with a number of clients across North America and help increase their recruiting capabilities. Our clients are in a variety of industries, from retail and technology to construction and healthcare. For any of our clients, we've helped them reduce their time to hire and their cost of hiring. And we're based in Vancouver, BC. For those of you that don't know where Vancouver, BC is, you can see there's a map of Canada and the US. And then there's our exact office. You can see our great view of the railroad tracks, the water, and the mountains of Vancouver, British Columbia. We're a member of the RPOA, so the Recruitment Process Outsourcing Association. And on the screen here, you can see a number of the different clients that we're already working with, helping to improve their recruitment capabilities. So basically, in a nutshell, Minefield Group becomes our client's branded recruitment department. So 3 items of housekeeping before we begin. Towards the end of this presentation, we'll have 3 Gen Yers available to answer your questions. We'll be sending out the link to access this webinar by the end of next week. And we'll also at that time be sending out a survey about how Gen Y friendly is your organization, so you can assess just how Gen Y friendly you are. So the last thing I want to talk about was our 2 presenters. So we have Corey Brooks, the Director of Client Services at Minefield Group. As you can see, he's been doing HR consulting for 6 years, and most of that time is in Australia. Before joining Minefield Group, he worked at Apple and ATI, and works with a number of our clients, including GrowthWorks and Mr. Luke. We also have Cameron Laker, the CEO and founder of Minefield Group. He previously worked at Ace and Earls and went to school at BCIT. So without any further ado, here's Corey Brooks and Cameron Laker.
Thanks, Jeff. Okay, everybody, good morning, and let's get on with it. So Gen Y is the subject here. Just a few really quick points to start off our conversation here. Gen Y, generally born between 1982 and 1997, and for those of you who have done any research on Gen Y, you know there's a plus or minus a few years around those numbers. Generally speaking, the parents are baby boomers or older Gen Xers. They estimate there's approximately 9.2 million Canadians and about 70 million Americans that are Gen Y, which is a very significant portion of the workforce. They really are the next wave of workers who are going to be leading organizations, and by 2010, Gen Y will actually outnumber Gen X in the workforce. This is a population pyramid, and I actually love these things, especially if you go online, find them, and find those ones that animate and show you how the population split has changed since 1950 to 2050. It's fascinating. The Gen Y number in America, I think, around 70-80 million compared to 50 million in the U.S. What one of the major differences are with Gen Y is that they generally a more diverse population. They are happier in general. They are more ambitious. Apparently, they drink less at college, as a recent report has said. Actually, less this year than any other year before 1965. They are definitely more entrepreneurial, and the new life dream, quote unquote, the American dream from the magazine I was reading a couple of years ago, is that the American dream, or the dream in general for North America, is that life has become much more entrepreneurial in nature. An article from Business Week, May 2005, quoted, "Instead of a simple 100-hour work week, the new model for Gen Ys is to work 60 hours a week, devote 20 hours to not-for-profit, and spend another 20 hours working on writing a plan to start their own business." So a quick question here. We wanted to ask you what the largest age group in your organization is. And Jeff, you're going to help me with this one?
So on your screen now, you'll be able to answer this question. So if you could select what's the most appropriate age range of the employees in your organization, and give everyone just a minute or two to answer this.
Interesting stats coming in. About 80% of you have already voted. Wait for it.
So on your screen right now, you can see that the largest group seems to be the 26 to 35-year-olds in terms of your organization. And no one really has anyone that's over the age of 56 working in their organization right now. So thank you for that. And we'll continue on.
Great, so that's very interesting. Thanks for the insight. Obviously, it's easy to understand the stats, to recognize the stats, but I think understanding them is where the challenge begins. Okay, so the differences between Gen X and Gen Y. Now, there's 6 categories here. There are many categories you can analyze differences across, but we've picked these 6 as we think they give a very good spectrum. Ambition, enterprise, job satisfaction, job hopping, perks, and itchy feet. So underneath ambition, 41% of Gen Y expect to progress rapidly into their organization compared to only 20% of Gen X. I think there's an expectation with this quote-unquote sense of entitlement that Gen Y has often been associated as having, and the desire to learn and grow also characterize Gen Y and contrast to Gen Xers, where these Gen Xers were considered to be more cynical of authority and have become more independent in their working style, which may depress that ambition number slightly. So the next point there, enterprise. 20% of Gen Ys expect to start their own business within the next 15 years, compared to only 15% of Gen X. Now, that's not a huge differential, but it is substantial enough for us to talk about it today. I think the successful enterprising boomer parents have brought up their children with a strong sense of self and have encouraged their children along the way to do what they believe in and that they can do anything they want to. Job satisfaction is an interesting one. For me particularly, 65% of Gen Ys are said to be satisfied with their jobs and work-life balance, comparing that to only 56% of Gen X. What's interesting here with Gen Y is they want to see strategic or social value in their work. There needs to be some greater meaning to which they contribute, and if it's not clear in the job, the satisfaction will drop. This stat also moreover, might show that Gen Xers are having a lower job satisfaction because they've realized they're doing too much of Gen Y's work, or the Gen Y folks have yet to experience what being really, really stressed out feels like. In terms of job hopping, this is very interesting. The average tenure of the Gen Y employee compared to Gen X is 16 months versus 3 years. And I think this one comes down to ambition and sense of entitlement. Overall outlook on career. Gen Y are generally considered to be optimistic, achievement-focused, and street-smart. And it's the combination of these traits and the stats around retention that send shivers down the spines of HR professionals because if anyone's behind developing the foundations for an adaptive culture to the new generation to foster greater retention and, I guess, at the minimum, employment loyalty, i.e., how do you get your Gen Y population to tell their friends? That said, Gen Y also been characterized as having a high need for supervision and structure and thrive on constant feedback in their workplace. The next point there, perks. Now this one, really quickly, 28% think gym memberships are important and 50% expect sabbaticals. compared to 70% of Gen X's who think gym memberships are important, and only 40% expect sabbaticals. Now, sabbaticals are sort of a thing of the past, and I don't think I've heard of those since 1989, but nonetheless, it does come up in the research. This last point here, itchy feet. 22% of Gen Ys think that they will be taking time off in the next 5 years to travel, compared to only 10% of Gen X. Now, obviously, Gen Y being at a different stage of life, the travel element is potentially more attractive, just given their stage. So the itchy feet component here, I think I'd add itchy fingers, because one of the major traits that has been recognized by Gen Y is that they're apparently heavy multitaskers, in the sense that they can perform several tasks simultaneously, and those tasks, each of those tasks and doing the multitasking actually requires some serious cognitive power and focused attention. So Gen Y and Gen X are obviously quite different, and each of those groups, cohorts of our society, want and expect different things. For Gen Y, technology is not a threat. It's pretty much been part of their nature since birth. Technology has sort of been a nanny or a teacher or a prop over the years to these individuals, and they're used to instant gratification and frequent access to feedback and two-way communication. They're very, very much digital natives. Some of the other research shows that, quote unquote, with great potential of the Gen Y also come great expectations, and I think that's a very specific point that needs to be brought out in the recruitment process, which we'll get to in a moment. They also want to achieve it all and grow in a focused environment. So, generally speaking, if you go to the next slide, the recruitment processes of yesterday don't work anymore, and looking at your recruitment process is not just a strategy in your HR program, it's actually mandatory for this generation. We need to make sure that Gen Y are absolutely sold on why they should join the company and what the deal is, what's in it for them. They need the process to be quick. Right now, we notice this, particularly in the process, that if a candidate is going through a process that is somewhat laborious, 5 or 6 interviews, 6 or 7 weeks, unless the job is very specific and that candidate is among the tail ends of the bell curve in the population, that's not gonna work. They also need to be motivated, and they have large expectations. So the next slide here talks a little bit about making sure that you folks don't forget to get your questions ready for our Gen Yers, because we got a few people here in the room that we're going to have a conversation with later.
On the right side of your screen, you should see a section that says question and answer. So if you have any questions, submit them there, and we'll be answering those a little later on in the presentation.
So, how do we improve our recruitment process? There's a number of ways to look at this. What we've chosen to do is, let's break it down into basic steps. So advertising and sourcing, phone screening, interviewing, presenting the offer, onboarding, and training and development. Now I'm just going to ask our CEO, Cam Laker, to talk a little bit about the difference between some of the logos you see on this slide.
So I'm assuming that some of you took part in our last webinar. In the last webinar, I was heavily focused around candidate sourcing and Web 2.0 sourcing. We're obviously seeing a massive shift, and if I can give a little bit of a component here, a big part of what we saw 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago when this company was founded was there was a massive paradigm shift going on in how people were going out and finding job opportunities. And you know, we do have some Gen Yers on the call here today that I definitely encourage you to ask some questions. But surprise, surprise, the 21-year-old is not going to the major job board to go look for a job opportunity anymore. And what we're seeing is obviously a massive evolution in how users are using these job boards, but specifically the types of job boards. And you'll see tools such as LinkedIn and Simply Hired and Facebook and just general blogs. And there's an interesting stat coming up here about blogs, and I think Corey's going to mention